Hello friends, welcome back. This is Grandpa's School of Hot Rod Building. In this series we'll be building a 41 Willys Coupe fitted for an S10 chassis. The manufacturer is Scott Rods out of Monroeville, Ohio. However, these techniques I'm going to be showing can be applied to about any custom car build. In this episode I'll be discussing the reassembly of the suspension system. Okay, the first thing we need to talk about is the vehicle stance. Do you want a car that's dropped or lowered? You want it to look stock? Are you going to build a gasser? You're going to put an airbag suspension in it? In this series I'm going to be going over the drop suspension. That's what I'm building. If you don't use the drop blocks and the drop spindles, you're going to end up with a stock look. If that's what you want to achieve, that's fine. For a gasser, you're going to need a special front end kit because those cars will come down hard off a wheel stand and your suspension you're going to bust up your suspension. If you like the bagged thing, the bagged look, that's great. You can do that. There's aftermarket kits for the S10 chassis. It's a Chevrolet. Here is a comparison of a stock spindle and a 2-inch drop spindle. The stock is the one on the left, and the drop spindle, you'll notice the spindle is up a little higher. When you do that, that actually lowers the car. And in this demonstration I'll be using, for my project I'm using a 2-inch drop. This is what Scott Lieber recommends. He's the manufacturer of these S10 Willys Coupe bodies. There is a disadvantage to using a drop kit. You do put a lot more load on the upper ball joint, but that's only a problem if you're going to do a lot of cornering, harsh cornering, high G turns on kind of rough road. Normally you shouldn't have any trouble. That's about it. But anyway, this is the most economical way to lower your front end and maintain stability. In fact, gives you a little bit more improved stability on your cornering. The most challenging part of reassembling your suspension is the coil springs on the front. You're going to have to compress them. And the compression tool you'll need is one that goes internal, as you see here. There's compression tools that grab the spring on the outside. That's for struts. This is the tool that part number that I rented from AutoZone. You can also get them at O'Reilly's. Maybe there's other places like Napa, whoever. A lot of auto parts stores have a tool rental program. But anyway, when I say up, when your chassis is upside down, that's the new up. That's where you're going to be accessing it. The hooks there over on the left end, those hook down at the other end of the chassis. And then this wedge tool, you wedge it in at the top of near the top of the springs. Now I held mine in place with some masking tapes. They wouldn't slide around on me, and it took an incredible amount of torque to compress the tool. I had to use my torque bar, my breaker bar and cheater bar to get the torque I needed, and that's another reason why you want to have your chassis upside down. You just need to have that leverage and that space to do it in. First of all, let's assume that you've already got your chassis and your upper and lower control arms and your spring already refinished, and you're ready to put it all back together again. First thing you want to do is turn your chassis upside down. There's a number of reasons for that. Believe it or not, it's a lot easier to locate your lower control arm when the chassis is upside down. The upper one, yeah, it can be done either way. Plus, you need to have very good access on this hole down here at the bottom of the lower control arm. Your spring is between that and the chassis, and your tool is inside, and the part that your wrench is going to attach to tighten it, to tighten your compression spring compressor is accessible from here. Now, before you put your spring in to position, there's this rubber boot that goes at the top and bottom of the spring. See if I can point it out. Anyways, this right here, there's one at the top and bottom. When you dismantled your S10, you probably found some remains of it. The new ones, they look a whole lot better. And what I do is I put a grease between the boot and the upper, well, it's the lower control arm and the chassis. And that helps the spring, when you compress everything and load it, it helps it find its place. There's a place that it naturally seats. And as you put it in there, it's really hard to feel and get it in there. You really can't see it. But if you put that grease on there and you put it under compression, it just slides right into place. And as you put it all together, you'll tighten into it'll be upside down. This is the lower ball joint, and then there's the upper ball joint up here. You'll just tighten those on and torque them. Well, you don't torque them, right? You just bottom out. Well, actually, there is a bit of torque you put on them in order to force it into place. And then you take your castle nut and run a cotter pin through them. Now this is there we go. I have a drop spindle, and you can see there, I got the 2-inch drop spindle. And you can see a little bit of clearance between the lower control arm and the rim. This is a 16-inch standard S10 rim. If you get the 3-inch drop block, you'll be really, really close to it. That's one of the reasons why, well, you can get the 3-inch drop block if you want to. I mean, the drop spindle. But I got the 2-inch, and according to Scott at Scott Rods, he says that gives it the look that most people want. So let's hope it is, because this is a lot of work to get this this thing, that spring in place, and that's what you have to do to press it to get these control arms to lock into the drop spindle. Another reason you want to have your chassis upside down for assembling your front suspension is because it requires an incredible amount of torque to compress your spring, your coil spring. I thought my impact wrench would be sufficient. It's rated at 450 foot-pounds of torque, but that's if I have a lot of air pressure, about 160 psi behind it. I just got this little, I call it a hot dog air compressor. It's enough for power nailing and filling tires, and it only goes up to 125 psi safely. I mean, I can go a little higher, but I don't like to push the limit of it. Once you have secured the upper and lower control arms to the spindle, you want to put your brake system back on, torque everything down the way it's supposed to be, attach your calipers to your spindle, and there's a plate there. Some people call it the gravel plate or dirt plate. You put that back on. There's a bracket that connects your brake line, from the hard line to the flexible line. You put that on, and you put the flex line from your caliper back on, and then you put your wheels on. And you only need to just finger tight your lug nuts. And then you're ready to flip your chassis back over to put the rear axle on. Now, your leaf springs on your S10 are not only too long for the Willys, but they're too stiff. So what's recommended is to get the front leaf springs of an early 90s Jeep Wrangler and put them on your ride here. They're rated for typically, the ones I got are rated at 650 pound load per spring. I figure that's about what I anticipate the back end to be. The 800 pound leaf springs would probably work too. Might give you a bit stiffer ride. It depends on what you want out of it. I like a soft ride. I'm getting to be an old guy. Now, here's a trick I discovered, and I've shared it with Scott. He's amazed. And there'll be proof of it. And this is the front bracket for the leaf springs of your S10. I'm over on the passenger side of the vehicle, and this bracket came off the driver's side, and the one that's over on the driver's side was here on the passenger side. I basically turned it around so I can move the eyelet up forward a little bit more. These bolts here and here, underside, are in the same, very same position as the original mounting bolt brackets. And I had to drill new holes for this bolt and this bolt. The original holes, there's one here and one, you can kind of see it right here, down there. Those are in the wrong position now. This wooden contraption is a homemade check fit gauge to make sure that my wheelbase is 102 inches, as Scott recommends. I put a measuring tape on it. Zoom in here. You can see it's 102 inches from the front bar to the back bar. With it now in place, you can see it right up against the tire, the front tire here. And right up against the back tire there. So I have a 102-inch wheelbase. Verified. Now, for those of you who haven't figured it out yet, when it comes to drilling holes in steel, you start with a very small diameter, this is bit, and you drill yourself a pilot hole. And you come in with what's called a step drill, and this makes very quick work of going to the diameter you need, your final diameter you need for your hole. Use some cutting fluid. But anyway, that just makes a lot faster work of it. You can buy these at Lowe's or Home Depot, or order it online. In my mind, that's one of the best inventions that have ever come out. I mean, I hate to use the old cliche, the best thing since sliced bread. It's going to be hard to find anything better for drilling holes than a step drill bit. This is your typical rear axle drop kit. It has these things called drop blocks, 2 or 3 inches long, rides between the axle and the shock plate, and it comes with longer U-bolts and the hardware. This is my 2-inch drop block for the rear suspension. The kit comes with the U-bolts, and this lower plate here is, you know, the original S10 shock mounting plate, and you just bolt it on underneath to the torque specified. It's easy to locate. There's here on this bracket on the differential, there's a little pin, and it drops into a hole on the top of the block, and then the block has a pin on it that drops into a little hole on the leaf spring. So locating it is really easy. Just follow the instructions. I was amazed at how easy this job was. I need to talk about shackle angle. This is very critical. It needs to be about 10 to 15 degrees here, as you see it right here. And the reason for that is, as you're bouncing around, you never want the bottom to have to come up, the bottom bolt to have to come up over the apex of the swing angle. And if you have it too steep, that is, if it's loaded with this mounting bracket too far forward, then when you hit hard bumps, you can do a lot of damage here to these bolts or tear them off up there. So that's your basic outline, is to kind of make sure that this lower bolt is back further than the top bolt, just a little bit. Okay guys, that pretty well covers it for today. I hope you found this information useful, no matter what project you're building. And stay tuned for our next episode. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'll be talking about transmissions, or maybe talking about exhaust. I haven't decided yet, or the fuel and air system. But anyway, we'll got a little bit more to go here, several more sessions. Take care.